Right. So this is a book. It's a rare book. Garry Allighan's Sir John Reith. You might know Sir John Reith, or Lord Reith as he became, was the first Director General of the BBC. He was actually General Manager at this point, because he only became Director General when it became the corporation. So this is the days of the British Broadcasting Company, okay? And there is a nice little tale in the very start of when the British Broadcasting Company started. You can find out more details on the podcast, The British Broadcasting Century, of course. But when it started, they had some temporary rooms, just one office really, in a place called Magnet House, and that was a sort of little room of the Institute of Electrical Engineers. One room, the entire BBC, 4 staff to begin with. They added, it's November 1922. Over the next couple of months, they added like number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. By about January, there's maybe 10, 12 people working there, 20, 30 people. Going to February, March, and then by April, May time, they outgrew their premises, that one office in Magnet House. With John Reith's office was just a cupboard. He found a cupboard. He sat in the cupboard. That was his office. So they found the Institute of Electrical Engineers was actually Savoy Hill. Right, they called it Savoy Hill, and it's right. You can see that still today. It's not a BBC building anymore because then they moved to Broadcasting House about 10 years later. But you can find it. It's by the Strand. North side of the Thames, Savoy Hill, right by the Savoy Hotel, which was great for borrowing musicians in those sort of early 20s as jazz was just starting to come in. So a gorgeous time period. You can see why I like to disappear into it. So I'll read you a bit here, and this is about the opening night of Savoy Hill. So the BBC at this point is about 4 or 5 months old. Right. Now it says here that, where should we begin? Let's begin here. So Sir John Reith himself says some of these tales may be apocryphal. He might not be aware of all that was recorded. In fact, there are some stories here that Sir John Reith would not have been aware of. So John said, we better have a ceremony. Okay. He said, you'd better tell Anderson, the secretary, Eckersley, the chief engineer, well, the only engineer, to be there, and perhaps Captain Round had better be there. That is David Jervis's grandfather. Hello, David. Perhaps Captain Round had better be there, seeing that it is Marconi equipment. Nice to know that Captain Round was only just about invited, even though he built the thing. His secretary had another thought. How shall they be dressed? Well, that was in the days before every member of the BBC staff on duty before the unseen microphone had to wear full evening dress. They'd better put on evening clothes, Sir John said. So the 3 officials sent urgent wires to their homes. That's the officials, Captain Round, Eckersley, the engineer, and Anderson, the secretary. Urgent wires were sent to their homes for glad rags to be brought to the office. Smart gear. Mrs. Anderson, the secretary's wife, was taking no chances. She brought both the dinner jacket and tail suits of her husbands, and it was lucky that she did. Peter Eckersley's suit turned up without a collar, and Captain Round's without a waistcoat. I think David Jervis has that waistcoat today, I believe. Is that right, David? You do let us know. Major Anderson, secretary, gave Eckersley, the engineer, one of his collars and a waistcoat to Round. Maybe that's the waistcoat you've got. Who knows? And when John Reith, immaculately clad, met them, Eckersley's chin was completely lost in his high large collar. Anderson, the secretary's waistcoat, was hanging lower than Round's dinner jacket. Not that this mattered much, because Captain Round was soon in his shirt sleeves, lying full length on his back, attending to the transmitter. But here's where it gets boozy. I promised you booze. This is where the booze comes in. That was only one incident out of several that made of that first broadcast an occasion that they would never forget. There was also the little comedy of the band. The opening programme of Savoy Hill was one of the Guards bands who'd been engaged to play. There were several other artists. Practically all the staff and all the members of the board of directors were there as well. The very canny general manager, John Reith, rather puritanical, Presbyterian, strict, I think it's fair to say. John Reith had splashed out to the extent of getting Lyons tea cakes, Lyons corner shops, they ran the cafes. Lyons corner shops were like the Starbucks of the day. Every street corner had a Lyons corner shop. So he got Lyons to fit a buffet in one of the rooms at Savoy Hill. Sorry, the light's beeping at me. But Major Anderson, the secretary, his military service had evidently taught him a little more about the habits of soldiers than John Reith's had. And of course, they've got one of the Guards' bands are playing. They've got a lot of soldiers there. Lyons, tea cakes and tea. Not going to cut it. So Major Anderson had no difficulty in imagining the exact terms in which the thirsty Guardsmen would describe the exhilarations of lemonade. He therefore ordered a supply of beer and a whisky. and to spare John Reith's blushes, he had them put in his own office. Unfortunately, the good news spread. It reached the ears of Sir William Noble, who's basically the chairman of the BBC at this point, and the other directors, who all with one accord resorted to the secretary's room. So basically everyone's found out about the booze and they've all just pegged it. They've left John Reith alone in the office clutching a lemonade. Many were the good-natured jests that passed between the directors at the expense of Reith and his pink tea party, and it was decidedly unfortunate that one of the noisiest of such jokes was cracked just as General Manager Sir John Reith entered the room. The look that the poor, good-intentioned secretary received ought to have burned him up on the spot. Last story, then we'll move on. The crowning joke of the evening was the last item on the programme. This was to be a talk by the late Lord Birkenhead, and the BBC staff began to get anxious as time passed and his lordship did not appear. Anxious telephone calls resulted in discovering that he was at dinner in the Savoy Hotel next door. And so Cecil Lewis, who was a deputy director of programmes, and another official, they were sent off post-haste to kidnap the worthy Earl, Lord Birkenhead, and bring him, by force if necessary, round to the studio, because he had to give this opening announcement. They found his lordship enjoying an excellent dinner, and so they courteously carried his hat and his cigar for him, at the same time showing him the way to the BBC headquarters. He's had a view. That's all right, said his happy lordship. Happy, or words to that effect. I don't need any notes, and if I had them, I certainly wouldn't allow anyone to censor them for me. So here goes. And then took place the delightful scene of John Reith at the microphone, soberly introducing Lord Birkenhead to the listening thousands, and his lordship broadcasting one of the best speeches the microphone has ever transmitted. So there you have it. We'll leave it there, I think. A boozy, gin-soaked, whiskey-soaked, beer-soaked opening night of Savoy Hill. Now, this book, like I said, was written by Garry Allighan. It's a 1938 book.